Talk about rest, I sleep when I'm dead. Motherfucker wanna come through tripping. Listen, I'm a ribbit, I'm a kung fu kick. Tell him I'm ready if you want it.
Welcome everybody to TruExact Show. I'm here with Travis, Brian, and our special guest today is technical cave diver, one of the best in the world, actually, from my understanding. Edd Sorenson. How you doing, Ed?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, thank you for responding to my creepy Facebook message on a personal level. For people who don't know this, I couldn't find Ed and on any Instagram or Twitter. We discussed off the air that he doesn't log in any of these, which is probably better off for his mental sanity there. But I Facebook messaged him my personal one to his personal one, which he could have taken as extremely creepy, but he didn't, and he responded back, and here we are. Now, Ed, appreciate you coming on, man. What we like to do first is, get into some things about your upbringing, how you got into cave diving, how you became the best in the world, one of the best in the world. I know you're probably humble about it, but I'll give you your flowers right now, just so somebody does. Where you grow up and, your background and how you got into this.
Okay. So I'm originally from Portland, Oregon. I'm Edd Sorenson, by the way, for those of you tuning in. So I was always into all kinds of extreme sports. I played hockey since I started to skate when I was 4 years old. I played hockey my whole life. I slalom skied in ski tournaments. I barefoot water skied. I skied, snow skied, and it always had to be off cliffs and down double black diamonds. And it always had to, my mom always made a joke to her friends. Oh, Ed's got a new extreme hobby. And she said, yeah, if it doesn't have anything to do with serious injury or death, Ed's not interested. So it was always extreme. Mud bog racing, tournament martial arts, hockey, you name it, I was doing it. I had my own excavation and construction company. I was doing fairly well. And then I was a scuba diver, but there was no caves in Oregon. I'd never even heard of cave diving. And I went down to visit a friend of mine in Fort Lauderdale to go do some wreck diving. And when I got there, it was record rainfall. No boats were going out. And he said, well, we could go up to this place called Jenny Springs and do a cavern dive. I went into the cavern one time and I was like, oh, I got to do this. And it was like a calling. And so I went back to Florida 2 weeks later. I got cave certified. And very early on, I found out that I was naturally pretty good at it. And then shortly thereafter, I think it was 1998, they started a thing called the International Underwater Cave Rescue and Recovery Team. And it was so that when there was a fatality, a drowning in an overhead environment, so it was a cave, a wreck, a mine, a downed aircraft, whatever. When you were in overhead, open water divers have direct descent to the surface. When you go into an overhead, it's very dangerous, very different set of rules. And it can be very safe with proper training. It can be very, very unforgiving without. And it was by invite only. And somehow I got invited, even though I was in Oregon. And so we were, a buddy of mine, Jeff Law, and I were in charge of Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And one time, I think it was 1999, might have been early 2000. I was down in Florida at Jenny Springs for 2 weeks of vacation diving. And this guy pops up, help, my wife. And off I went for my first body recovery. Now, for the last 20 plus years, they've always said in the IUCR training that you have to do it in 2 and 3 and 4 man teams to get these bodies extricated, located, and extricated. Well, we weren't taught that. We were just taught really paperwork and incident reports and stuff like that. They didn't really even tell us how to do it. And I get thrust into this. I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, hold on, Ed. I gotta tell you, why in your right? First of all, talking to people like you, it makes you realize how little of a man I actually am. And it's depressing hearing you do all these extreme sports. Like, I won't even jump in a pool that's over my head. But also, you said it was your calling. See, Brian, that's how I feel about drive-through fast food. Big Macs, Wendy's. That's my calling. Not cave diving. But so you're saying it was just paperwork. So like,
So-
where in your right mind were you like, okay, I'm gonna do this anyway?
So I go in and it just happened. I got the lady out. We tried CPR mouth to mouth when we got her on the shore. It was to no avail. She ended up passing away.
Oh.
Well, she was dead anyway, but we were not able to bring her back.
Did that have an effect on you now? Like, I'm sure it did, obviously. Like, that's your first one you went after, and not to say it was a failure, but like the lady passed away. Was that like, how did you want to do it after that? Like, you know, that's gotta be a terrible experience.
When her husband came out and yelled for help, she had already passed away. We tried to bring her back to life, but she had been gone for a while, and it just wasn't going to happen. Now, when I go in the water, whether I'm in a good mood or a bad mood or somewhere in between, everything shuts off, and I just do what I need to do. And same thing happened on that body recovery. I just did what I needed to do when I got out. I knew how to do the incident report. And it just so happened that my cave instructor was working at that facility, and she ended up helping me do all the incident reports. So I would analyze the gas, check his regulators, check his lights, all the stuff that we have to do, and she would write it all down. And then all of a sudden, I'm doing another recovery and another one. And then one day, the guy that Jeff Bauer was the head of the NACD, National Association of Cave Diving. He was the president, and he was also a body recovery diver. And a guy got lost in a cave, and he was the closest IUCR diver to the scene. So they called him. He came out. He found the body. The body was in such a tight, small little no mount restriction. No mount meaning we have to take all our gear off and shove it ahead of us. He could not do, he attempted and attempted and attempted, and he just couldn't do it. He came out, told the sheriff, it's impossible. He's not coming out. He's stuck. His knees are stuck at the bottom, his head's stuck at the top. There's just visible a little bit of his chest. He's stuck, he's rigor mortis up, it's impossible, it can't come out. They said, well, we got to do something. What do we do? And he said, well, we could just, that's a crappy little cave that doesn't go anywhere. We could just dynamite it closed, and that could be his tomb. And the sheriff's like, yeah, we can't do that. And he said, there's got to be somebody that can do this. He goes, I just told you it's impossible. He goes, there's got to be somebody we can call. And Jeff said, there's only one guy I know that's even crazy enough to attempt this. And so they called me. I was actually in Orlando. I just flown our fire chief down for a chief's convention, and I was fueling up the plane when the call came in. So I flew home and packed up my gear, headed to Tallahassee, went out first thing the next morning. Sheriff's office airboated me out, and I ended up doing 8 dives over about 7 hours trying to get this guy out.
So how does that work? Like, you go in for an hour and you come back out, like, to scope the place?
I'd go in, assess what I needed. I came out on like the 3rd dive. I told him I needed some pry bars, had to move a rock, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I ended up having to go a completely different way. When I was trying to move a rock, the rock that was next to him actually swung around and completely blocked the way he went in. So I actually screwed him and myself, and I'm like, oh shit, now he is not coming out. So I found another way over the top of this breakdown pile. I had to take all my gear off, shove it through the hole. Now, if I drop it on the other side, it's going to sail to the bottom. I'm going to die. So I have to hang on to this gear and wiggle my way through.
And how small of a space are we talking?
Yeah.
About this big.
Jesus.
And so then I get stuck in my chest, and I'm still hanging onto this, wiggling through. I get through, I put my gear back on, I get him unstuck, but he can't come out the way he came in because I screwed that up by moving that rock wrong. So now there's another little slot over here. I got to shove him through there. 2 guys came out with me. I got out and had them come in. I said, I made this special custom harness. That's a whole nother long story, to extricate bodies in places where it's super tight. So it goes around the armpit, back of the head, armpit. So it's pulling on the whole upper torso. And I told him, I said, you guys be on the outside of the cavern area by daylight. And I said, I'll throw this rope through, you'll pull, and I'll tuck and shoehorn this guy in there. And we're doing that. And these are two IUCRR divers, fellow rescue divers. And they're pulling him, and I had put him in there upside down. And when he popped out and they saw his dead face, they freaked out, panicked, and bolted and left me in there.
Wow.
So anyway,
some friends.
Long story short, I finally get this guy out, come out. Well, I got the reputation after that. When it's impossible, call Ed. Later on, a few years ago, numerous other ones happened, but a few years ago, there was two guys came up missing in the Dominican Republic. They have their own DRSS, Dominican Speleological Society. So they went in, they found the guy, and he was in such a small, tight, nasty place, they couldn't get him out. So they brought in some more experts. They couldn't do it. Then they brought in more. Then they couldn't do it. Then they brought in more. All in all, I think they had 18 or 19 different experts trying this, and nobody could get the job done. Finally, guy that's one of the most phenomenal divers in the world, Patrick Widman, he was in Mexico. He was good friends with Philip. He was the last one they called in. And Philip's thinking, if he can't do it, nobody can. He came over, tried for 4 days. He couldn't do it. He was calling Lamar Hires from Dive Right, who had taught him his IUCRR training. And somehow it got to Patrick, when it's impossible, call Ed. So he couldn't do it. So he called me. I flew out. And at first, the government, the mayor, wasn't even going to let me fly in. And when they called me, we had already booked tickets. And we're packing the gear ready to transport. And then they called back and said, the mayor said you can't come. And I said, what did I do? He said, it's too dangerous. We've already had the best divers in the world, and nobody can do it. They don't want to endanger anybody else's life. And I said, well, those two families need closure. They can't just be without their father. I said, ask them to reconsider. I said, tell him to Google my name. He'll actually find out that I'm pretty goddamn good at what I do. So an hour later, he calls me back and he said, the mayor says you can come. Now, they've been attempting this for 19 days. He said, the mayor said you can come, but you only have 8 days. If you can't get it done in 8 days, you got to leave, and they're just going to leave the bodies in. So I flew there. Oh, and I always do this stuff by myself. But Patrick, the last thing he said is, he goes, Ed, I know you have a reputation for doing this by yourself and nobody else does. But this is too dangerous. It's too small. It's too nasty. It's too tight. You got to have somebody with you. So I said, okay. I got off the phone and then I'm thinking, who the hell am I going to take? The only time I took two people in, they both panicked, bolted, left me in there.
Yeah, right.
That was twice as much work. So I called Mike Young, the owner of Kiss Rebreather, and good friend of mine. And I said, hey, I know you're busy, but, and I told him about it. And he said, yeah, let's do this. So we went over there. It took me 5.5 hours. That's a long dive. And we got the first victim out. And the Dominican Navy was there, and their captain or commandant or whoever he was that was in charge of the scene. When we come out with a body bag, they went and called the mayor. You know, they got one of them out. So the mayor came down, wanted to meet me, and he's like, oh, you know, tomorrow we're going to have, when you get the next guy out, we're going to have a heroes banquet, and we're going to do this, we're going to have rewards. And I said, whoa, slow down. I said, one, I haven't even found the second guy. They haven't even found the second guy. They're assuming he's further in, but they couldn't get around the victim to see. I said, so now I have to go in zero visibility, search a cave with one hand while running a reel with the other hand, and try and figure out where I'm going in zero visibility and find a dead body. So, and I said, so let's not count any chickens before they get hatched. I said, and also, I said, I've got lots of hero awards. I said, that's for when I bring people out alive. I rescue them. I said, these people are dead. This is just a job. I said, I'm just doing a job. I said, I appreciate the effort. I appreciate the thoughts. I said, but I don't want any awards for this. So we went back in the next day, and it was about, no, I think it was 5 hours the first dive, first day, and it was about 5.5 the second. We got him out. So there again, just, kind of quench that when it's impossible, call in.
You're like the negotiator, Kevin Spacey. When they needed I don't know if you ever seen that movie. Horrible reference by me if you haven't. But if you have seen the movie, it's a great movie and you should watch it. Trav, I'll pass it to you if you got any questions. Then we'll go to Brian really quick before we get to the one, the Duracell rescue. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said this like group for like the rescue and recovery team was made in 1998, and then you were just like invited as part of the team, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm assuming like I'm certified, or I was certified as a lifeguard for a short period of time in college.
Not the same, Trav.
No, it's not. I'm saying, but like there's to get certified for that, there's a very specific set of rules that you got to do it by the book on everything, or else you're not going to pass the assessment. For you, you're doing like, I'm assuming you're writing the rules, especially if this is the first time some sort of cave rescue group team has been made. So like my question is like what are like you're making the rules, or you're writing the rules, are any of the rules that you're writing, have they changed over the years as you keep doing these dives? Like what is your process going in there and doing this insanely dangerous job?
Well, that's the thing. There are no rules. I'm not sure what, for the last 20 years. So there was a guy named Henry Nicholson. He's the one that started the IUCR. He was former law enforcement. And he saw that every time 911 was called, because there was somebody drowned or missing, Sheriff's Department, police, or fire department was called. They were asked, and they usually have a dive team, but they're all open water divers. They're into search and recovery, but they're not cave certified. They're not overhead trained. It's a whole different set of rules. So he saw that from time to time, these law enforcement or fire department guys, first responders, were passing away because they were doing something that was above their training, and they were not prepared for it. But when they're called, they're such brave men and women that I'll do that. And they risk their lives, and sometimes it costs them their lives. So Henry thought, we need to do this with a group of trained professional divers that are specialized in overhead. And that's where that was put together. But like I said, I never got any training. We were filling out paperwork. First time it was just see what you see and figure it out. Just like if we go back to the impossible one where I talked about the harness. Okay, that's not a harness you can buy. That's a harness I made on the spot. I went, okay, if I try and pull him through there, I can pull his arms off. We don't want to do that. Here's what we want to do. So I made a harness that does that for pulling them forward, and sometimes you have to pull them backwards. So when we were going to the Dominican Republic, I told Mike, in my right-hand pocket, I'm going to have this harness, and I described it to him. And then when we got to the condo, I put it on me, and he drugged me around with it. Then I said, sometimes we have to take them out backwards because of the way they rigor mortis up. And I said, so I got this harness that goes around the waist, through a hoop, down to the knees, through another loop, around, figure eights around both knees. So it pulls the knees and feet together, and then comes around to the ankles. And then that way it pulls them out like a dart. And he's like, where did you get that? I said, I made it. He goes, how do you come up with this stuff? And I said, necessity. Then I said, in this pocket, I have this bag. He goes, what's the bag for? I said, we put it over their head. For what? And I said, for one, I like to bring them out as intact as possible. So if the family sees them, they're not all ground to hamburger. I said, and B, there was a time when the body had been in there and started to decompose. And when they pulled on the head came off. And I said, now you got to pick up this slimy head. And I said, if we put a bag on the head to start with, if it comes off, because he'd been in there for 19 days in 80-something degree water. I said, we can just pick up the bag. And he's like, oh my God, why do you think of shit like this?
Wild.
And
Like what goes through your mind? I'm not like when you put you're dragging this, rigor mortis body out and the head comes off, like what were you like, oops? Like what? Like
my bad.
Yeah, like,
that didn't happen to me. That happened to him. But I remember him telling the story, and I thought, if it comes off, you got these nice drawstrings, you can just pick the head up and take it with you.
Like I just envision, I'm sorry, like I envision you bringing like the body and having to. Oh, I got to go back. I left the head behind. I'm sorry, just my brain.
And that's exactly what happened. They got the body out, and the sheriff said, "Where's the head?" Well, it's still in there. He said, "Well, we need that."
We need that.
So he goes back in to get the head, and he said he's picking it up, and the jaw falls off. And he said he just starts throwing up through his regulator. And he gets the head in the bag, and he brings it out. And then the sheriff's like, well, "Where's the jaw?" "It's still in there." And he goes, "I need that too." And he goes, "Well, I can't throw up anymore. So if you want it, you go get it."
Anybody who watches this, it was. I don't want to offend anyone, but it made me laugh. I apologize, Brian. Brian, Brian, go on. Any questions before we get to the one main rescue that got him Tim McGraw to fly him out, which we'll get to. Brian, go.
So I imagine a lot of times when you're diving into these spaces, they're very tight, they're very small. I know obviously like claustrophobia is a thing. Do you do anything to kind of calm yourself when you get into those scenarios, or is it just it comes naturally to you?
So a lot of times the worst part of these for me, and everybody's different that does this kind of stuff. But for me, the worst part is going there because my grandfather used to have a sign on his garage wall, and I tell this to all my cave students: the hurrieder I go, the hinder I get. The more you try and rush things, the more things get screwed up. So I'm trying to be efficient because I need to go. Whether it's a rescue or a recovery. When it's a rescue, we really have to go fast because they don't have long to be alive. But when it's a recovery, you still need to make seriously fast time. But if you rush, you're going to screw stuff up. So you've got to get ready. There's a million things going through your mind. Adrenaline, my stomach knots up. But as soon as I get in the water, which should be the scariest part, because 99% of the time, they don't die peacefully. They go out kicking and screaming, and it's zero visibility or near zero. And so, but as soon as my head goes in the water, everything shuts off. I turn into a machine, and I've had numerous reporters on these impossible ones. Well, how come these guys couldn't do it and you did? What did you do different? I don't know. I wasn't there when they were doing what they did. But my dad taught me at an early age. I worked for my grandfather and I worked for my father. And when I wanted to go home at night, I'd say, "Can we go home now, Dad?" And he'd say, "Are you done?" "No, then we're not going home." So that was the way I was brought up. "Are you done?" "No, then you're not going home." So go in, get your job done. Don't whine about it. Don't cry about it. Don't bitch about it. Just get it done. And that's the way I was brought up.
Show some stick-to-itiveness, Brian. That's what it is. But you say like you don't know what the other people are doing. Have there ever been a time that you've been around like the 18 people that went in to try to save that one person or try to recover those bodies? Then you get there and you hear them talking about what they did, and you're just like, "Well, that was fucking stupid. That's not gonna work." Like, do you ever like hear that stuff?
No, they pretty much just told me that they were too stuck and they couldn't do it.
Okay.
About the most details I got was remember when those kids got trapped in that cave in Thailand, the soccer team?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was the first one that was called because I have more cave rescues than anybody on the planet. So I was called first, but the IUCRR has a contract with many, many different countries, but Thailand wasn't one of them. So we had to get permission. I had my gear packed. Mike had his gear packed, and we were going to go over there and do that rescue. And the head of the IUCR was trying to talk me out of it. He said, "Have you looked at a map that's right on the Burmese border?" He said, "That's nothing but opiate fields and poppy fields and drug czars." He said, "It's the most dangerous place on the planet." And I said, "Well, the pictures I saw, it was nothing but military and police." I said, "I don't think any cartels are going to fuck with somebody coming over to try and rescue 12 kids."
Right.
With the media there and the Navy and the military. And I said, "I'll be fine." So we're ready to go, but the Thai government had to give us permission in writing, and they didn't want to do that. They wanted their people to do it. In the meantime, the British rescue team went over, even though they weren't invited. And the Thai government made them sit in the corner. Then one of their guys drowned. So they said, "Okay, go do it." And they got him out. Now, the media hailed them as the best rescue team in the world. A year later, 6 months later, 5 of that rescue team, the best rescue team in the world, was in Tennessee, and they were diving a cave with a friend of mine, Thorne. And it was a little shitty cave only 2 people had ever been in, my friend Jason and my friend Thorne. And really small, nasty, dingy, crappy biz. And they had been in there for 2 days diving and trying to explore further into this cave. Well, one of the dives, 2 of them went in, only 1 came out. When the guy comes out, his friends are like, "Where's Josh?" And he goes, "Well, he was in front of me. He should have been out here." And they said, "Well, he's not here." So they didn't even call 911 because they're the best rescue team in the world. They just continued to go in, dive after dive. I think they did 7 or 8 dives over 11 hours looking for this guy. Couldn't find him. At 2:30 in the morning, they called me because of my reputation. And I'm answering, Stacey answers the phone, dead asleep. And she's like, "Hello? Yes, he's here, but he's asleep." And then all of a sudden she goes, "Shit, you're going to want to take this call." So now I got to pack my shit 2:30 in the morning, fly to Tennessee. And when I land, they've got a state trooper helicopter, and they pick me up, air flight me in the helicopter, light flight me out to into the mountains. And then I got to go get this guy out. Now, I know I'm doing a body recovery at this point. I mean, this guy's been gone for 26 hours.
How long can they, like, how long would the, like, death, how long does it take for them to usually perish if they do get stuck? What are you looking at?
Well, the tanks he had and the depth they were at, he couldn't have lasted in the water and the cold. It's only 50 degrees. He couldn't have lasted more than a few hours, 3-4 hours of gas. He didn't have enough to last more than 3 hours tops.
Okay.
So it's 26 hours later. Now, they said that there was an air pocket in the back and they hoped that he got there, but they couldn't. They've been in there for 2 days, in and out. And they couldn't find their way back there. They broke the guideline, and they couldn't find him. They couldn't find the air pocket, and they call me. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys have been exploring this cave for 2 days. I've never been there in my life. Yet you call me expecting me to go find your friend when just did 8 dives in a cave you've been in for 2 days and you couldn't find him. So, but I didn't say that. I just said, yes, I'm on my way. So I get there. They fly me into the mountains. I'm gearing up. But before I gear up, they take me into, they've got this big 40-foot mobile command center. And there's 4 different counties of sheriffs there. There's the other 4 rescue divers that tried to find him. So they're telling me what they saw and what they did. And that was probably the most details I got. And I went in, and if you Google or if you search on YouTube for Tennessee Cave Rescue, you'll actually see I have a camera on my head, on my mask. And all of a sudden I went in searching for this guy, and I forgot to turn my camera on. And I'm in the cave probably 400 or 500 feet in, and all of a sudden I bump my head on the rock because it's really small. And the camera moved. And I went, oh shit, I forgot to turn that on. So I turn on the camera. All of a sudden, I see the reel that he had laying in the mud. So I'm like, okay, he's going to be dead right here. So I'm looking around for a dead body. And all of a sudden, I see the shimmering of an air pocket. And I pop up. And when I pop up, there he is sitting on a shelf. And he goes, hey, thanks for coming to get me.
He was alive? Holy
He was
shit.
alive.
Yeah.
And
So
I don't know who was more shocked, me or him. I was like, oh, fuck, this guy's alive.
yeah, and if I was him, I'd go back and punch my friends in the fucking face. I'd be like, where the hell were you guys?
So this air pocket's not that big, and he's been breathing it for 28 hours, and you breathe out all the oxygen.
Yeah.
So I'm on a rebreather, and I won't even breathe that air for 1 second. So in the video, you'll see every time he asks me something, I have to close my rebreather, take it out of my mouth, talk to him, and then put it back in. And he says, thanks for coming to get me. And I said, hey, thanks for being here. And I'm trying to keep it light.
Yeah.
I don't want him panicking. I got to take him back into that near-death experience he's already been through once. And he says, who are you? Now, this guy's from the UK. I've never met him in my life. And I said, I'm Edd Sorenson. He goes, I was hoping they'd get you.
Wow. Nice.
Oh, wow.
No one's ever said that about me for anything. Like, absolutely anything.
So then I asked him, are you warm enough? Because I need to know if he can aid in his own rescue. And we talked for a couple of minutes, and then I tell him what we're going to do, and then I get him out. Well, they had asked me before I went in, what's your plan? Now, all these sheriffs have been waiting around for hours. They'd closed the cave. They wouldn't let anybody in there. And they kept telling everybody, we're waiting for an expert out of Florida. And everybody kept saying, is it Edd Sorenson? Yeah, do you know him? Yeah, if I was in there, that's who I'd want coming to get me. So I finally get there, and all these different counties of sheriffs, they're all looking at me like, I'm Moses coming down from the mountain with the tablets. And he goes, what's your plan? I go, I don't have a plan. And he looks at me stunned, like, what the fuck do you mean you don't have a plan? And I said, he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, I've been doing this for 25 years, and not any two of them have ever been the same. I said, I go in, I see what I see, and I make my plan based on what I see. And he goes, oh, okay. Are you going to use their line, or are you going to run your own line? I said, I don't know. He goes, what do you mean you don't know? And he goes, I go, well, if their line's good, I'll use it. If there's not, I got a reel right here. I'll run my own. I said, but there again, I won't know till I get in there. How long is your dive going to be? I don't know. And at this point, this is the third I don't know.
Yeah.
And he's probably thinking to himself, shit, did we get the right guy?
Who the hell? Did this guy steal the identity of somebody and fly over here?
This guy doesn't know anything. So anyway, I get my shit together and I go in, and I told him my suit heater broke. So, and this is 50-degree water. I'm used to being in 70-degree water. I said, so I'm not going to be in there more than 3.5 hours tops. So I go in, and somehow I find this guy in less than 15 minutes.
That's amazing.
They've been searching for 11 hours in a cave they've been in for 2 days.
I'm starting to think they wanted him not to come back. Just throwing it out there. Like, it could have been one of those, like, hey, why don't we go diving?
Yeah, he owed me money.
I'm up in that air pocket talking to him for about 10 or 11 minutes. And then I have him out in about 17 or 18 minutes. And it's just the side of a mountain with this little stream coming out of it. And it looks like a little mud puddle. Well, they had all gone to lunch. There was like 200 people there. There was a whole bunch of dry cave rescue people for surface support. There was 4 counties of sheriffs. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of people. And they're all over eating lunch. They left one guy to watch the hole. And as I'm coming out, I see his feet through the reflection. And all of a sudden I hear him. He sounds like he's depressed. He goes, fuck, I think he's done already. Like I quit. And then all of a sudden he sees the second light behind my light. And he goes, fuck, there's 2 of them.
That's awesome.
You see those old Westerns where like 200 Indians come over the mountain? That's what it looked like. There was all these people just came running up. And one of my buddies they're all going for Josh. And I'm over here. And as soon as we popped out of the water, Josh gave me a big hug. And my buddy, who's a helicopter pilot, he looks at me and he looks at his watch and he goes, "Really, Ed? 45 minutes? You couldn't have swam around and made this look difficult?"
Right. Yeah, you made everybody look bad.
I said, "No,
Right.
it's way too fucking cold in here and I need something to eat."
And you
So-
could understand their like in awe or frustration though. If you think about it, so you're going there and they're asking you questions about what your plan is, you essentially would have the same answers as I would if they had asked me. Hey, I don't know. You could use them.
Yeah.
I
We're
don't
gonna just-
know.
I mean, and basically the answer was you were going to go out the
Yeah.
front door.
Yeah, we see what
know what?
happens.
What's funny is I did an interview on this particular rescue with I think it was Jonathan Bird's Blue World.
Mhm.
And it got a tremendous amount of attention apparently. And there was a group of divers and they called the shop, and ever since I almost died of cancer, throat cancer, I got really badly burned, radiation burns. And so I never leave home without this bottle of water.
Okay.
And it looks like a scuba tank.
Yeah.
And then people go, "Oh, wow, a water bottle looks like a scuba tank. That's pretty cool." And this group, they wanted to buy a bunch of these water bottles from us. And they said, "Will Ed autograph them for us?" And so they came in. I was teaching a class. I said, "Sure." And he said, he wants you to sign your name on the bottle, but he also wants you to write, "I don't have a plan."
That's great. Yeah.
In quotations. So I did that. And all of a sudden, people started calling up. Everybody wanted a water bottle with my name and "I don't have a plan." So I don't know. I guess that kind of went viral or something. I don't
No, that's pretty cool though. It's like your niche. Like
Yeah.
it's also some guy's coming to save me in a cave. Oh, really? Yeah, but he doesn't have a plan. That's as scary
But don't
as
worry.
it is. Brian, go on if you got anything.
No, I'm like blown away by that
Yeah.
entire story.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine. I'm gonna ask you this: how obviously, like his tank that he had when he was diving, he had to have been out of air because he's sitting in that air pocket. How do you bring does you have an extra line for him on yours or something?
That's an excellent question.
God damn, don't give him that much credit, Ed. It was an okay question. Let's not put him, it was an okay.
You were wondering it too.
So,
Yeah.
so yes, when I go in, I do what's called side mount diving. And if you can see my shirt, the tanks are on the diver's side instead of on their back. And the reason I do that is so I can squeeze into much smaller areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
So on my right side tank, I have a 7-foot hose. So I can donate that and put them in front of me or behind me. In cave training, we always put the out of gas diver in front. And in a couple of these rescue scenarios, like this one in particular, when we did the in-depth, the whole story, I told him I said I put him behind me. And people that knew cave diving knew that the out of gas diver was supposed to be in front. They all went apeshit crazy. Ed, how can Ed be so irresponsible? You're supposed to put the out of gas diver in front. He did it backwards. He did it wrong. And people started calling me, "Why did you put them behind?" Because they could panic. I need them to be behind me so that I can if he could find his way out, he would have been out. Guess what? He couldn't. I have to get him out. So I put him behind me.
Makes
In a
sense.
diving scenario where somebody just runs out of gas, yes, I always put them in front. That's how we train. But so I have that 7-foot hose on this side. Plus I'm on a rebreather. So I'm not breathing any of that gas or almost none of that gas out of those tanks. So they're going to be completely full when I get to it. But what I did was ask him, and if you watch the video, you can see, I said, after I asked him if he was warm enough, I said, "Do you have any gas left?" And he was doing side mount diving as well. And he said, yes, I have 50 bar in this tank and 100 bar in this tank. Now, we go by PSI, pounds per square inch in Imperial, but they in metric go by bar. So I said, okay, that'll be enough to get you out. I said, start on your fullest tank. If you have to switch, I'll have you back here on my ankle. Just squeeze my ankle twice, and I will give you my long hose. I have enough gas to get you out of here 4 times. So yes, I had gas for him, but he didn't need it. I got him on his own gas. In fact, in the video, he's sitting up on this mud shelf. He had tried over that 28 hours that he'd been in there. He had tried 3 self-rescues where he tried to rescue himself, but couldn't find his way out. His buddies had tried 8 dives over 11 hours trying to find him, couldn't find him. So I wanted him behind me, and I said, just hang on to me. I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to get you out of here. So that's what I did.
That's awesome, man. Like, good for you. Congratulations on the save, and good for that guy. I hope you guys remain friends.
He has reached out a couple times. He was very appreciative that day. You know, earlier in the show, I told you, as soon as I get in the water, I turn into a machine. I just, thoughts, emotions, none of that shit goes into my head. I always have, whenever I get called for a rescue or recovery, usually the sheriff's department's on scene already, and I tell them, block it off with police tape. I don't want anybody near me. I don't allow family members or friends or bystanders, anybody to talk to me. The only people that can talk to me before a rescue or recovery are law enforcement or military, whoever's in charge of that scene. That's it. I don't want anybody getting in my head. And as soon as I get in the water, I just do it. I've been asked by those 2 guys that I told you about on the earlier story that had seen the body, panicked and bolted and left me there. They came back later, one of them, and asked me, how do you do this? I haven't slept in a week. Every time I close my eyes, I see that dead face, and it really fucked me up. How do you do this? But it doesn't affect me. They just, and then later on, he asked me, he was looking around, he goes, did they ever come visit you at night? And I'm like, well, they didn't. But it's just a job. I go in, I get it done. No matter how gruesome or gory or bloody or nasty, however bad it gets, I just get the job done. It's just a job.
No.
I never get emotional, except you'll see in that, if you watch that helmet cam footage, as soon as I pop up, I just pump my fist in the air. I go, fuck yes. Because that one, I didn't even believe I did that. So it was pretty
I'll drop the link in the comment section of that video. I'm gonna watch it right after this is over.
I literally watched it before this.
Now, Ed, usually when I have like shark experts on and we talk to them, I'll ask them, hey, if you ever go on an excursion or a joke, I'm willing to come tag sharks for you. I can safely say if you're ever in New Jersey, don't contact me because I'm not doing this. Like, this is literally something I see on YouTube. Like, sadly, my algorithm has how I kind of came in contact with you. I saw like some video, cave dive, somebody got stuck. So I Googled top cave experts, cave divers, and your name was one of the first to pop up. So I reached out and like just seeing like, how did this become a thing? Do you know the history of it? Like cave diving, and also how many people pass away a year on average of it, if you know the numbers?
I don't. It's actually a very safe sport with proper training. Okay. It's a very, very unforgiving sport without proper training.
That's my next question, Eddie. I want to get to that. Yeah. What causes the people getting stuck? Like, is it sometimes they need to go forward? I've seen videos where they should be going feet backwards to get down. Is it just like a twerk in the hip or just a small mistake, a hairline thing that causes like their demise?
Well, the thing is there's usually not one thing that causes their demise. If you look at incident reports, usually this happened, which led to this, which led to a silt out, which led to this, which led to them dying. Last year at this time, well, up until 2012, there had only been 4 cave rescues in history. That's how rare they are. 4 in history. Ever. 4. Wow.
So there's a low percent. You're saying like, so most of them are body. Obviously, it's a low percentage.
Body recoveries.
Body recoveries. Okay, so out of 100, only like 4 of them are going to rescue, you know?
Out of hundreds of thousands, one will be rescued. So up until
God.
2012, there have only been 4 ever in history. In 2012, I did 4 in 1 year. Then I did
Pretty
Very
impressive.
then I did a 5th one in 2013. Then I rescued Josh out of that cave up there in 2000. I forgot, 17 or 18. And then last year, Memorial Day weekend, I was eating lunch and I wasn't teaching class that day. And I was eating lunch and
What were you eating? Just random question.
I was eating a peanut butter and honey sandwich.
Okay. I've never had honey with peanut butter. I've heard it, but
I was keeping it simple that day. So
okay.
I just finished eating lunch and my shop manager comes busting through the door and goes, "We gotta go." I go, "All right, where the hell are we going?" And he goes, "Benny's stuck." And it's a guy that we knew. And his dive partner got out. They were only 45 minutes into the dive. And he's stuck in a little side passage. So my guys keep all my gear in one spot. My tanks are always full. My stuff is always ready. So when we get a call, we can be rolling within about 8 minutes. I mean, we're like faster than firemen sliding down the pole. So by the time I got down the stairs, they already had my truck running in the driveway, fully loaded. Patrick, my shop manager, was behind the wheel. I just jumped in the passenger seat and off we went. The park is less than a mile down the road. He's doing 100 miles an hour. Sheriff's Department had the gate open. We come flying in, and he said, "I'll get your stuff ready. Just put your suit on." So I put my suit on. He's got all my stuff ready. I'm in the cave in minutes flat. Now he's on a rebreather, the guy that's stuck. And a rebreather can last 7, 8 hours if he needs to.
Okay.
He's only been in there an hour and less than an hour, in like 40 minutes and maybe an hour. So there's absolutely no reason I shouldn't be rescuing this guy. I've got a scooter. It's really fast. I'm hauling ass, even though it's near zero visibility. And I get to where they said he was it's 900 feet back. I'm doing 200 feet a minute. So I'm there in a couple minutes. I went through that side passage, they call it a jump, and he wasn't there. So and the visibility started getting better. So I know he's not there. He's back further. So I'm poking around all these little holes. I find him. He's already dead.
Oh.
So there's absolutely no reason I shouldn't have been able to get him out. But he panicked and didn't stay calm. If he'd have just stayed calm, I would have got him out too. But as it was a very hard extrication because he was really wedged in there tight. But it's just one of those things that everybody says, you know what I would do. That's the comment I hear all the time, and I hate that comment with all my heart because you don't know what you do until you're there. Mm. And this guy was the nicest guy. Loved this guy. Super professional. He was a medical advice guy for Dan, Divers Alert Network. When people get in trouble, scuba diving accidents or decompression sickness, they call. He's one of the ones that they talk to. He's really calm, cool, collected, nice guy. Not the opposite of what you would think would panic. And boom, he panicked and he drowned. So there's absolutely no reason I shouldn't have got him out of there, but I didn't.
That's it sounds like that one kind of hit you a little. You know what I mean? Like that one out of all the.
It didn't really bother me, even though he was a friend. It's just one of those things. It's a job. But right. You know, the funny thing is, Stacy, my wife, she is with me on so many body recoveries. There's so many women. I don't mean to be sexist. If anybody's listening, please don't hate me. But a lot of women don't like that kind of gory, nasty, body recovery stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Stacy is there every single time I do a body recovery or rescue, except for the ones that are out of the country and have to fly. But she has helped the sheriff's dive team get bodies out. She's gone in. The first time that was a rebreather and the sheriff's department didn't know how to deal with the rebreather, she jumped in the water in her street clothes and helped get the rebreather off the dead body. And it's a friend of ours. So she's there all the time. She's a trooper. She's just another professional when it comes to this kind of stuff. After we got Benny out and everything was done and we went home that night, she was in bed early and she's usually not an early sleeper. And I said, "You going to bed already?" "No." I said, "Well, you're in bed." So and then I could see she was like, I don't think she was crying, but she was not happy. And I said, "Are you okay?" She goes, "No." And I said, "What's wrong?" And she goes, "Benny." So of all the dead bodies she's seen, and I've had to pull out several of my friends, and it's not a good thing, but she's there for all of them, and she's just a professional. That one hit her hard. So anyway, you just never know till you're there.
Brian, I hope that if I ever pass away in the water, you shed a tear for me.
I'm gonna have to call Ed to pull you out.
All right, Ed, what's the plan? There is none.
I don't have a plan.
Leave them.
All right, Ed, that was that's a sad one, man. But I guess lift spirits up here. Tell us about you meeting Tim McGraw and him flying you out, and your wife meeting one of her favorite artists after a cave rescue.
Yeah, that was really cool. So Duracell was coming out with this new battery, and they were going to give away in this promotion. They're going to give away 1 million batteries to first responders, and so they're going to have these recreations of heroic events. And Tim's brother is a fireman, so they were going to have Tim. It was all going to be about firemen, and they'd rescued a baby or whatever the story was, and this is all for a promotion for this battery for Duracell. So this guy calls me, and I said, "Well, I'm not a first responder. I'm not a fireman." I said, "Why? What are you calling me for?" And he goes, "Well, I was tasked with finding the stories that we were going to videotape and recreate." And he said, "When I Googled hero and saving lives and blah, 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 your name kept popping up, and I'd see, Cave Diver, and I'd scroll on by. But," he said, "your name just kept popping up. So he said, finally, he thought, well, shit, I gotta read one of these. So he read one. He's like, "Oh my God," I was blown away. So he said, "I pitched it to Duracell," and he said, "Even though he's not a fireman, can we do this?" And he said, "I don't know. Tim McGraw is hosting the thing. You call his publicist. If it's okay with Tim, we can do it." So they call Tim McGraw and they send him the story. He reads the story and he calls this guy up and he goes, "Get him here now. I have to meet this guy."
That's awesome.
So Stacy is back, we're from Oregon. So she was back in Portland at a family reunion. And Tim is actually her absolute all-time favorite country artist and her hero. So when they call me and said, "Hey, Tim McGraw wants to meet you. Can you come fly to New York?" I said, "I'll let you know." So I'm trying to free up my schedule, and I call Stacy, and she's been up there for like 2 weeks. And I said, "Hey, when you get back, the day after you get back, you want to go on a little road trip?" She's like, "No, I do not." She goes, "I just want to be home and relax and do nothing. I don't want to go on the road. I don't want to do anything. We're not doing a thing." I said, "Okay, well, I'll call Tim McGraw and tell him that we can't make it." And she goes, "What?" And I said, "Tim McGraw is flying us to New York to meet him." And she's like, "Oh, now I know you're kidding." I said, "I'm not." So she flew home. We fly up, and they put us up in a really nice hotel and right by Central Park. And
First time in New York?
Yes. Well, no, I'd been there once, New York and New Jersey. In the late 80s, I did a job.
So first time in a long time now.
Yeah.
Cool.
And we we went from Philadelphia into New York, went to a couple nightclubs and in and out done. So really first time. So we get there, we see some sights, and we're supposed to go to this sound stage. Now, Tim McGraw is going to do the intro for these rescue shows. And it's going to be him sitting on a bar stool talking about what's coming up. And they invite, it's 4 firemen and myself. They invite us to the sound stage. They tell everybody, you have to leave your phones out here. You can't take any pictures. He forbids it. And Stacy's like, well, I want to go in there. So we leave our phones there. We're all inside the sound stage. We're waiting for Tim. And they announce, okay, Tim McGraw is coming in. So we're all supposed to line up, the 4 firemen and myself. And the spouses are all over by the food couches and food table. And they come, Tim McGraw walks in and he goes, this is Bob, this is Jim, this is Bill. And then he goes, this is Edd Sorenson. And Tim comes over and grabs me, puts his arm around me and pulls me off to the side. He goes, we got to talk. And he goes, I read this story. It sounds too fantastic to be true. You got to tell me the story. So I did. So we're talking and we're hitting it off and everything's cool. And I said, is there any way, I said, you're my wife's all-time hero. I said, is there any way you can at least just say hi? And he's like, yeah. So he calls to his publicist guy. He goes, bring her over. So she comes over and she's starstruck and she's like, oh, it's so great to meet you. And like 12 seconds in, the guy goes, all right, places, everybody, we got to film. And so they shuffle her off. So she didn't hardly even get to say hi. So we're all leaving, and Tim McGraw goes up to sit on this bar stool on stage to start filming this thing. And he's like, get another chair up here.
That's awesome.
Like, for what? Oh, I want Ed up here. And he's like, that's not in the script. He goes, I don't care.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a plan, Ed.
Yeah,
he didn't have a plan either. It worked.
We didn't have a plan.
Nothing.
So he brings a chair up and we do this thing together, and which was really cool. And about 10 minutes in, there's a malfunction with the air conditioning unit in the soundstage. And the guy is like yelling, cut, cut, cut. We got to fix the air conditioning. So they're like, take 5. So we're sitting up there bullshitting. And I said, is there any way you could talk to him? And he's like, yeah, bring her back up. So she comes up, we're talking for another 5-10 minutes. And all of a sudden they get the air conditioning fixed. They're like, all right, places. And they shuffle her off. So we finish shooting this intro. And then we get ready to leave. And him and I are talking. And he's telling me he's a scuba diver and blah, blah, blah. And we're hitting it off. He's a super nice guy, just a really down-to-earth, nicest guy on the planet. And I said, I hate to be a pest. I said, but my wife really loves you. Is there any possible way we can get a picture with you and her? And he's like, absolutely. So he brings his photographer up. And so there's a picture of him with his arm around her. And then me on one side and him on the other side of her. And if you go to her Facebook page, Stacey Martin.
Did she cut you out of the photo, Ed? And it's
no, she didn't.
Okay.
There's actually, her Facebook page is a picture of her and I and Tim McGraw.
Okay.
Anyway, she got to say hi to Tim. He's just a super nice guy, and it was a lot of fun.
But it's like you said, man, just like you never know where life's gonna bring you. Just there, you like we laughed about it, like you don't have a plan, but like life doesn't have a plan. You know, so right. So just like you would have never thought in a million years in Portland, you cave diving, that your wife would meet her hero, right? Even us, Brian, like and Trav, with this podcast, we've talked to people who we never would have even dreamed of talking to. Like some of our idols, actually, we've actually spoken to. So in a way, not having a plan is the plan. I should quote that. I should quote that.
I love it.
That's a t-shirt.
First person to ever say that. Not having a plan.
I might steal that.
Plan. That's fine.
I love it.
Now, Ed, we'll wrap up here quick. Just to add, great to end on an awesome note with Tim McGraw being such a cool guy. It's what you like to hear when people are that high up and they can just be so down to earth. I feel like country stars are like that. If I had to guess, most of them. Not a huge fan of the music, but I know most of them are pretty down to earth from stories I hear. About the Cave Adventures you started up, like what exactly is that business and how'd you get into that really quick?
Okay, so my original plan was I found this house in Florida on a man-made lake that had 7 caves in it. That was a cave diver's dream come true. And I bought it.
How did that pass the inspection?
I bought it. I bought it when I was here on vacation. Went home, told Stacy, "Hey, I bought a house in Florida. We're moving." And she's like, "Okay, cool, let's go." And all the guys on my hockey team, they're like, "That's what you do on vacation. You'll get bored. You'll be back in 6 months." I said, "All right, save me a spot." So I sold my excavation company. I sold my 4 rental houses. I sold my house, my motorhome, boats, dune buggies, mud bog trucks, packed up what I could fit in a trailer, and moved to Florida. And the plan was just to retire and go cave diving every day. Well, when I got to this little town, and it's a small town, well, really small back 22 years ago when we moved here, but I found out there wasn't a dive shop in town. The closest place I could get my tanks filled was 60 miles that way, 55 miles that way, 70 miles that way, or 80 miles that way. So I'm like, well, shit, that's not going to work out for me. So then I started looking at air compressors and fill stations and booster pumps, and I'm going to have to buy like $100,000 worth of equipment. And I'm thinking, shit, that's expensive. Well, I just sold all of my toys, and my accountant said, you need a tax write-off. You need lots of them, and you're going to get killed in taxes. So he said, start a dive shop. I said, I don't want a dive shop. He said, just start it and buy all the stuff you need to buy, write it all off, and then close it. And I said, okay, perfect. So I started Cave Adventures, and I bought all the stuff I needed. And the first day I was down at the park diving, the only people that dove around here at the time, because there was no fill station, was somebody that was coming from that place going to that place. And they'd stop here along the way. They'd dive while they had full tanks, and then they'd leave. And so I'm talking to these people that had been there several times, and I'm packing up as they're getting ready to go in the water. And they said, well, it was nice meeting you. Maybe we'll see you someday. And I said, well, I'll be back. I said, I'm just going back to my house to fill my tanks. And they're like, there's nowhere to fill tanks around here. I said, yeah, I just started a shop, Cave Adventures. And they said, oh, you have a card? And it grew and grew and grew into $1 million company. So it just, you know, I had quit teaching, and I saw the teaching quality had kept declining and going downhill and downhill. So I started teaching again. And then due to my reputation for having really high standards, people come from all over the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
I got a guy that just was in class today from Germany. Last one was from Puerto Rico. Last one from Mexico. In fact, there's 80,000 cave instructors in Mexico. He flew from Mexico to learn from me.
That's awesome.
So that's how I started it. And I was just going to start it, write all my stuff off, and then quit. Well, it just grew and grew and grew. And then I met people like Gus and Woody and Jonathan Bird, and they wanted to hear these stories, and they put them on the air. And then, you know, I do lectures all over. People ask me, will you come and talk to our shit? I've even done I've done lectures for Elks Lodge, Moose Lodge, Travelers, you name it. If there's a group, they've had me out to talk. One day I get a call from this lady, and she said, will you do a talk for us at this church? And I said, I'd be happy to. She said, what do you charge? I said, for you, I'm not going to charge you anything. And she said, well, I have to tell you, it's for kids as young as second grade. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, ooh, wow, I'm going to have to tone down my language for one, and probably leave out a lot of the bloody details and gore.
You don't want to talk about the guy who's, the guy's head falling off.
So I said, okay. And so I go, well, I make up a PowerPoint with a bunch of slides and stuff. And there's goofy things like a guy comes up from a cave, and he came up in a bunch of weed, and he looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon. So we had really cool pictures for the kids. And in our dive shop, in our online store, we used to have this company sold these things called a Scuba Teddy. And it was a little teddy bear, and it had a mask and a snorkel and fins on. And so I took this, and we had a whole bunch of them in a box. There was like 50 of them. I said, load those in my truck. So I get to this thing, and when I get there, the Sunday school teacher, she says, Ed, I just want to warn you up front. These kids have a really small attention window. And she said, we have speakers every month. And she said, we give them 20 minutes to 40 minutes. Nobody's ever made it past about 8 minutes. And the kids are off playing and they don't want to hear it anymore. They get bored. And she said, it's nothing personal. It's just kids. I said, okay, no problem. I'll just talk till they don't want me to talk anymore and I'll leave. So I bring this little teddy bear and I'm explaining things to the kids. Now, this is our mask. Scuba Teddy says, and so I'm using this teddy bear and the kids are enthralled. And I went through the whole 40 minutes and the lady comes up and she was like, okay, Mr. Sorenson, got to leave now. Does anybody have any questions? Now, these little kids started asking really good questions.
Were they better than Brian's question?
No, that was
I have to know.
They were way above second grade level.
Gotcha.
And I'm answering question, and it's good continuing to go on, and we're way past where we should have been at. And they got to close the church up. And the lady comes up, okay, Ed's got to go now. One last. So these kids are all enthralled with this teddy bear. So I said, who thinks they might want this teddy bear? Well, all their hands go up. And I'm like, oh, shit, we only got one. I said, okay, who thinks they asked the best question? So they all raise their hand. I go, okay, that didn't work. Who's the best looking? They all raise their hand. And I'm like, well, luckily, Scuba Teddy's got friends. And so I said, why not? I gave them all a Scuba Teddy bear.
Now,
the lady said, what do we possibly owe you for this? We can't believe this. This went over so well. And I said, not a dime. And she goes,
no, that's probably awesome. That was probably your favorite speech, honestly. That was probably one of them.
Yeah.
we got to at least pay for the stuffed animals. I said, no, you don't. They said their look on their face was good enough for me.
Now, Ed, before we go, two things. I have to say, you missed out on $1 billion idea that you could have called it an Eddie Bear and put it in your shop.
For next ideas, I'm calling you.
Yeah, really. Just, hey, we're Facebook friends now. You can always message me. And if anybody ever comes into your shop and says, hey, that's Ed from the TruExact show, you got to message me and let me know as well.
There you go.
One quick round table, Ed, and then we'll let you go here. Go, Trav, really quick.
So you said, look, 3 times over the course of this, like it's a whole different set of rules with being overhead certified. What are some golden rules to know that makes cave diving different than just regular scuba diving?
Wow, another excellent question.
Well, how the hell am I the only one not asking a good? You know what, Ed? I'll ask the best question at the end. Go. Answer Travis's.
All right. So when in open water, that means we have a direct descent to the surface. Now we're in an overhead. So if something goes wrong, and it always does, we can't just go to the surface. We have to get out before we go to the surface. So we have to have redundant everything. So usually you see a scuba tank, one scuba tank on the diver, that's an open water diver. To dive in a cave, you have to have 2 minimum. So they'll either have back mounted doubles or they'll have 2 on their side mount. Computers, we have 2 computers. We have redundant computers. There's a 3 light minimum rule because caves are dark. They're devoid of light. So we have a primary light and a minimum 2 backup lights in case that primary light fails. We have to have redundant regulators, the things we breathe off. So each tank has its separate regulator. So we have redundant writing devices. We carry a backup spare mask. We have backup everything. So there's always redundancy in all of our gear. If something breaks, we get the next one out. There's also what's called I talked about the 3 light minimum rule, a continuous guideline to the surface. Because if the lights go out, you're in zero viz. You're not going home.
Right.
We run a small line through the cave, and it would be like that, less than an 1/8 inch diameter. So we do what's called okaying the line, and we just follow that line out. So there's others, don't dive above your training, blah, blah, blah. But those are the basics. We really need a continuous guideline to the surface, 3 light minimum rule, redundant, everything, stuff like that.
All right, sounds good. I'll never do it, but I'll keep that in mind, Ed, if it ever comes in. Brian, last round table, go on. What you got?
I don't have anything else, honestly. I'm still like
stunned, blown away.
You know what the thing is? It's like we've talked for an hour, but it doesn't feel like an hour. Like just hearing the stories and everything, it's amazing.
Yeah, Brian's just trying to sucker up for a free teddy bear. Yeah. Don't let him fool you, Eddie. All right, Ed, really quick, last thing, because you mentioned hockey a few times, and Brian and I are fans of hockey. What's your favorite team since you grew up in Portland?
Okay, so
that was a good question, right?
That was an excellent question.
Yeah, all right, there you go.
So when my parents took me to a hockey game when I was 4, there used to be, now we have the NHL, correct?
Yes.
There used to be the NHL and the WHL.
Okay, yes.
That was the Western Hockey League. So like Vancouver Canucks, which are part of the NHL, used to be the WHL. Seattle Totems, Portland's professional hockey team was the Portland Buckaroos. So at that time, the Portland Buckaroos obviously were my favorite because I'm from Portland. But then they abolished the I actually got to play with the Buckaroos
nice.
When I was 17 years old. And I got to play with my longtime heroes. And I remember scoring my first goal on a professional goalie. I was really enthralled. But now that I live in Florida, we're Tampa Bay Lightning fans.
Okay. So if you had to pick a team to win the cup and it was between the Rangers and Penguins, who would you rather see win the Stanley Cup?
Rangers.
Yeah. Blew it right in your face.
I mean, the Penguins are a great team, but in case Sidney Crosby is listening to the show, I don't like you.
That's even better.
I didn't like Evgeny Malkin either.
Have to delve into it, Ed. We can just leave it at you don't like the Penguins.
Most of the Penguins players.
But I got friends up in New York that are all Ranger fans, and I do like the Rangers. So if the Lightning can't win it, I'd like to see the Rangers win it.
All right. Well, that's a fun question, Ed. I hope you had a great time, man. Like I told you, it's kind of just like a fireside chat, a barbecue, just hanging out. So, hey, we're Facebook friends now, unless you deny me, which would be really weird. Thanks for coming on, bro. I hope this was different than other interviews you've done. I know it was like we do music more, but these are always fun to do, man.
I appreciate it. You guys are great. I really appreciate you guys having me on. Had a great time. Really enjoyed it.